Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of my Computercraft challenge. Now, there's been a few changes around here since. It's actually been about 2 months since I recorded, even though the video is uploaded pretty recently. I've expanded out my hole a bit, so I've got a nice hole for the turtle and a bit more space for myself. And I've also done a few modifications on the program I showed. I know I probably should have done that on screen, but, well, there's a lot of testing of stuff which I thought would be boring, so I've updated everything to the newest Computercraft, so hopefully everything should be, well, and there's some new features of the new Computercraft that I'm already using in some of my programs. So, right, I have our APIs here, so first of all let's have a look at our... I forget this isn't Linux. Okay, so I still have our fuel check function, although I've still got a fuel. Well, I've added in fuel position at the top, and I'll go into that in a bit. The fuel check function, just as a reminder, if the fuel level is less than 10, it will select the 16th slot and refuel. If the fuel level is 0, then it will search through every slot. Now that's kind of a deprecated function, as I've added in this new refuel function. Now, first thing it does, I'm making this a bit more dynamic, and we shall see when we get onto the turtle function rewriting. Right, so first thing it does is check if there is any items in slot 16. Now, this is actually not for the first time I call it, for many subsequent times. And I'll talk about that in a bit. So, then we have this while loop here, and while the fuel level is less than max. Now, max is a parameter I'm passing through to the function. So the idea being is that I say, right, I want to go 10 distance. Now, it will come and check while it is the fuel level less than max, and if it is, then we need to do a bit of refueling. Now, I've just thought that I might want to change that slightly. No, I'll leave it like that for the time being. I've heard there are some changes to the amount of fuel used per movement. I'm not too sure, I'll have to have a look at that later on, but for the time being. So, okay, so what it does is it checks the fuel slot position that I've either set here or from a previous time, and it will select that position and refuel just by 1. Now, if there isn't any fuelable items in that, well, if there isn't anything in that position, actually, I might want to change that slightly. Right, if I do... The main reason I want to change this is because if for some reason the item's been changed since the last time the refuel is in, and then suddenly the item in that slot isn't a refuelable item anymore, then we'll end up in a bit of an infinite loop. So, one of the added features of the refuel function, if you say refuel 0, then that means it will check to see if that item is a fuel item. So, if it's not a fuel item, then it will go to this else statement to search the inventory for fuel. So what it does is it goes through, it iterates through each slot. Then we use the new turtle.refuel 0 to check whether it's actually a refuelable item. Then we set the fuel position to that position. and break out. Now, if nothing's found, then we return false from the function and the refueling has failed. So then, once a new item's been found, the loop then goes around and continues through this stage until we have enough fuel to continue. Now finally, if all this gets through successfully, we select the original position and return true. Now this is what I have done is we edit our API's POS. This is quite different now. So instead of having any function that I'm calling, well, that I'm using, calling the, well, checking the fuel manually by itself, I've added it to these functions here. So this function, well, we looked at it briefly before, but I made a more generic function for movement on the directions. Now, I've gone and modified it a bit, because when GPS starts coming into play, it will start using the Minecraft coordinate system, which is quite frankly horrific in terms of, well, standards. I believe it's the x-axis goes along horizontally, the y-axis goes up and down, and the z-axis goes back and forward. Now, the weird thing is, with the z-axis, when it increases, that's when you're heading south. And when you're heading north, it goes negative, so I've changed things around a bit for that. What this also does is it can deal with if you're going backwards or forwards. So I just set a value for the difference and it deals with it manually. I haven't actually tested this yet, so I'm going to have to, well, I can test it out here. I've written a function to save the state, kind of like in my select position. Select item slot. Okay, so turtle.forward. Alright, this is quite different, I think. So what I have done is I have implemented a number of steps. So actually, you can probably see my mouse, so here as well. Oh, great, it's raining. So now I can say I want to move forward 10 spaces, which is, well, quite, very useful. So the first thing it will do is, well, if there's no parameter, it will set it to 1. So for instance, the go function will still work. Now, we check whether there's enough fuel, or rather, whether we can get enough fuel, and it will return, well, it will return false if it can't get enough fuel for it. Now, then we start having a loop to step forward however many times. So we call the base forward button and store its output. Then if we have completed successfully, we call the move direction function and our save state. So this function will change our internal position state, and this one will save it to far. Now else, if for some reason we weren't able to move, then we want to return, if steps is null, which is like, for instance, if the go function calls it, or any of the base ROM programs call it, then it won't pass a parameter, which means steps will be nil. So then it will automatically return false. But if an actual parameter is specified, then it will return how many steps that has actually been moved. And then we just return true, or the steps that we moved at the end. So, oh no, wait, that is not. Okay, so actually, I hope I saved. But okay, so now the back function is exactly the same, just we're going backwards. So I'll skip over that. Turtle.up. Pretty much as before, if I'd actually written it before. It follows the same format as the forward and back. Same for down. Okay, turn left. And this isn't being displayed properly for some reason. I've been doing it a bit in the external editor, so... Right, so turtle.turnLeft is being replaced... Well, it does exactly the same thing, except it calculates what direction it's going. If the direction is less than 0, so it becomes -1, then it sets it to 3. So, for instance, we're facing north, then we turn left. We're facing west, and west is our direction 3. Then we save the state, and we actually do the turn, because turning never fails. Then we've got get POS, which returns every value, and get X, Y, and Z. Now these functions are a bit more intelligent down the bottom, so rather than replacing the base ones there before. So we've got turn 2. So turn 2, you can specify a direction, and it will figure out, and it's probably not the best way of doing it, but it will figure out the, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, which direction to turn, and then turn until it reaches that direction. So, least amount of turns, hopefully. Now I've also got go to Z, and go to Y and go to X, so this will basically, if I want to go to a Z position that's greater than the current Z position, then we turn to the second one first, and then we move forward how many times. Then the go to X is, well, essentially it's the same thing, and go to Y, obviously it's on the Y axis, so that's different. I've got a reset function to reset its state, for instance if I move it, and then this is just loading up this part loads up the state on startup if there is a position in state. You know, so if the file has been saved, then it will load it back up essentially. What I will do is once I start implementing GPS systems, I will modify this to say, right, if I can't get a GPS position, then load up the state. Now the interesting thing with the GPS positions is then I'm going to have to either use the stored direction, which will probably be alright. No, it's not fantastic, but either the stored direction or... hang on, where's my cursor? There we go. The stored direction, or I'm going to have to do a bit of calculating which direction we're going by testing forward or back, and see what values change from the GPS, and then modify, well, and then setting the direction correctly. The reason why I might need to do that is because if for some reason the game closes while the turtle is moving and it doesn't actually properly save its position, then let's reboot. Right, so just out, how much fuel do we have? So we've got 76 fuel at the moment. I've been messing around with a few things, so I've been testing out the fuel functions, but let's just say, okay, so put the spruce wood in, so let's go into Lua. So that would just say fuel dot refuel, I want to go 100. Now it will go through and take as many logs as it needs to get, so if, what is it, turtle dot get fuel level, it's now 106. Great. So it'll only take exactly the amount of fuel it needs for that particular movement. It's the middle of the night at the moment, I think. But, I don't know. So what I will do is, actually I've still got a few more things to go through, so I may as well. The other API, the select API. Okay, so I think I've written a bit of this before, but I can't quite remember. So what we do is when we select, what it does, it stores the position that's selected into cell pos, and then actually selects it. Then it saves the state to file. And we've got a function getPos, which will get the current selected position. And now this stuff is when the API is loaded, it will check if there is a state already. Well, no, if there isn't a state directory, then make the state directory. Then it will load in the state if the state exists. So, and finally, if the state does exist, it will select that position, because I noticed that when you actually log out of Minecraft and log back in, before at least, it didn't remember what position was currently selected, whereas when you rebooted it still did. So then finally, I have edited logger quite a bit actually. So I've got some variables here, but let's go over it a bit. So this portion here, it will search through the inventory and find out which slot is viable to use for the logger. What's that noise? Sounds like there's slime. Certainly looks like it from what's falling down from above. Yep, that's the slime. I'll deal with that a bit later. Right, so that's gonna be annoying, isn't it? Whoa, lagging. I don't like going out at night. Okay, so I'll be a bit less annoying now. Apart from the rain. Right, so basically what this part does is it will search through for empty slots in the inventory, because it may not have them. It's just future-proofing. Now what it will also do is it will check the log in front of it to see whether it is equal to, well, an item it's already got. So, for instance, if there are different types of trees, it will go through and select the correct slot, so it will always dig into the correct position. Now, if it doesn't have a slot already for it, then it will set it to the first empty slot in the inventory. So, right, so then we dig our first block. I mean, this is mostly the same. I just put this check in here to make sure that we can move forward. For some reason, I don't quite know why I put that in there. I'm storing its Y position as it is, so then later on I can call my go to Y function and just move straight down rather than dig down until it reaches the ground and whatnot. So then we dig up. The reason I'm doing this first is because, well, rather than putting it in this while loop, is just in case the turtle has refueled from that first log. So I want to make sure that it actually digs and moves up. So then we keep comparing up and dig up. And this will only work on a 1x1 tree, but well, we'll modify that a bit later maybe. But okay, so then we return to the start Y position. Now, what it will then do is dig down through the tree. So, for instance, sometimes I thought a tree was on ground level, I dug it, but actually it went down a bit further. So I added this bit in, and then we end up going back to the Y position. So that's the changes to logger. Now, daytime has come, so what was that?